Hey guys, it is Silver's the Beast, and I am back here today to bring you a video about the story behind all the Infinity Blade games and the book. Of course, spoilers ahead. But I'm just going to answer a couple questions that I see people having about the story frequently. This is not going to be like a full-blown story synopsis, but I am going to answer a few questions about it. So yeah, I have like a 8-minute video playing behind this, and hopefully you guys will enjoy. Alright, so the first question is, why is it that the Deathless use swords if they have all this futuristic technology? Like, Wraith has his spaceship, the God King has like this huge globe projector thing in Infinity Blade 1. If you read the book, there's some stuff in there as well, some really cool technology. But why would the Deathless continue to use swords instead of just pulling out guns and blasting everybody? Well, there's two reasons. One, they want to keep the Deathless, or like the rulers of the world, right? And so they want to keep the mortals, like the normal people, under control. So they pretend that the technology does not exist, which is why you don't see it a lot. But they pretend that technology does not exist, and therefore the mortals don't ever see it or hear it. They still think they're living in ancient times. And so yeah, that's how they keep the mortals under control. I assume if they ever lost control of the mortals, they would just pull out laser guns and blast them all. Yeah, but yeah, there has been a little show of technology that Cyrus has been using. Like he uses, or Cyrus/Osar uses the lightsabers or the Solar Trans OX. That's some technology, and the magic that you use actually isn't technology, or actually isn't magic. It's technology. You have these transport discs, and so if you're using fire magic, you would throw a transport disc and fire, and then you'd put the other transport disc on your ring, and then you would use the transport disc to shoot fire at your enemy, and that's how the magic works. It's not actually magic. But yeah, so that's the first question. That's the first reason they don't use laser guns or whatever. The second one is they have like this ancient code called the Aegis Forms, which is like their whole style of fighting and etc. Like the whole Infinity Blade style of fighting is called the Aegis Forms, and that forms requires skill, not power. So they base it off of a code of skill and honor instead of just having the biggest gun. So yeah, those are the two reasons why the Deathless they use swords and some would say medieval time equipment instead of using technology. You do see technology now and again, but they tend to stay to their code of the Aegis Forms. Alright, so next question I see people having a lot is, who is Osar and who is Cyrus? Well, not who is Cyrus, but who is Osar? And the answer is Osar is Cyrus. We don't really know why. Well, we know that Osar, he did something terrible, I assume, and then he wiped he had Tell, if you've done the Vault of Tears, or you've read the book, he had Tell wipe his memory and told him not to tell him anything. Eventually, Cyrus starts figuring out stuff about his past, but he used to be Osar, and we think, or the forum thinks, that he did something terrible, and that made him want to wipe his memory and never hear it. It's like kind of like getting drunk, I guess. But he wanted to forget everything, so he wiped his memory and started a new person. And when you were playing Infinity Blade 1 and it kept saying Bloodline, that was actually the same person being reborn, just having his memory wiped each time. So each time he got killed by God King, Tell would take his body back, wipe his memory, and then rebirth him. And that would be the same person, just with the no memory. And so that's how the story of Infinity Blade 1 worked, and how it changed to Infinity Blade 2, where Cyrus/Osar does not keep getting his memory wiped clean, and he you can remember stuff. Like it's the same person each time instead of being separate people, even though it was the same person in Infinity Blade 1. Alright, so that's that question, and so what's another question people ask a lot? Well, who is Tell? I already talked about him a little bit in this video, but I will talk about Tell a little bit. Tell is your personal robot guy. He's kind of like R2-D2, if you will. He just performs everything that Cyrus needs him to. Whenever Cyrus dies in the castle, he will rebirth him, etc., etc. He'll answer questions to an extent, because Osar, when he was Osar, actually told Tell not to tell him anything about his past. Of course, Cyrus ends up learning things about his past, but Tell was informed not to tell Cyrus about his past, so he will not answer questions about Cyrus's past. But he will answer most things. So Tell's just a helpful person. He's just like his personal butler, if you will, I guess. And he follows him around. If you look closely during the game, you can see him jumping around, and in certain places around the castle, you can see him watching you. Because he watches you so that whenever you die, he can rebirth you, and you can start again. Alright, so let's talk about the worker a little bit. The worker is obviously a bad dude. The Infinity of Infinity Blade 2. Well, actually, it's from our point of view, the worker looks like a bad guy, but he may not be a bad guy. It could be Cyrus is the bad guy, because Osar, or Cyrus's armor, or his old armor of choice, is the Vile armor. So a lot of people think that Osar used to be called Osar the Vile, so all the Deathless hated him, and he must have done something terrible and then wiped his memory. But from our point of view, the worker looks like a bad guy, and he may well be, but we're not completely sure about that. But so let's talk a little bit about Infinity Blade Dungeons before my time runs out here. Cyrus, the worker, is the master of the forge in Infinity Blade Dungeons. He is presumed to be the worker of secrets. We're not sure about that, but that's just what we think. And in Infinity Blade Dungeons, we will be playing the master of the forge, as per the Infinity Blade Dungeons website. And we're assuming that is Cyrus, Torin from the Sky Cages, or some other guy we don't know yet. And that Infinity Blade Dungeons would be interesting. I'm not really that excited for the gameplay because this doesn't seem like my style. I like the Aegis forms of Infinity Blade 1 and 2. But I will enjoy it for the story because the story in Infinity Blade is quite intriguing and mystic. It's kind of cool. It's like sci-fi and fantasy at the same time. So yeah, I really like the story behind Infinity Blade. And so yeah, that's just a couple things about the story. If you want more, I will do a part 2. But that's all for now, guys. I'm Silver's the Beast, and I'm out.